Welcome back to Explaining Everything, the channel where we dive into the stories and mysteries behind everyday things. Today's question comes from one of our curious viewers, Abundio Noel Libot. Thanks for the suggestion, Abundio. You asked, why are Europe and Asia separated continents? If you've ever looked at a map and thought, wait, isn't that just one giant landmass? You're not alone. Today, we're unpacking the bizarre history, geography, and a sprinkle of human ego that led to this weird continental split. So, if you've been losing sleep over this, or just want some fun facts to flex at parties, stick around as we dive into the great Europe-Asia debate, right here on Explaining Everything. Meet the Ural Mountains, the Caspian Sea, and the Black Sea, three geographical features that somehow convinced humanity they form a legitimate border between Europe and Asia. The Ural Mountains? A long, rocky stretch that cuts through Russia but wouldn't stop a determined squirrel from crossing. The Caspian Sea? An awkwardly large saltwater lake that can't decide if it wants to be part of the action. And the Black Sea? Just sitting there, minding its own business, wondering how it ended up being part of this whole continental divide drama. Yet, despite the randomness, we've all agreed that this wobbly line somehow separates two entire continents. It's like drawing a line down your kitchen and declaring one side gourmet chef territory and the other microwave meal zone. But hey, humans have a strange obsession with drawing lines on maps and pretending they mean something. So here we are. As with most weird things in history, we can probably blame the ancient Greeks for this one. These guys looked at a map and went, yeah, this bit over here, that's our part of the world. Let's call it Europe. And that huge chunk of land over there, let's lump it into one big place and call it Asia. And just like that, bam! Two continents were born, thanks to some old guys in togas who had never even been to Siberia. But why did they do this? Simple. Ego. The Greeks saw themselves as the center of civilization and needed a way to separate their sophisticated world from the big, scary, unknown lands to the east. Never mind that there were advanced civilizations in Asia at the time. China, Persia, India. They just went, nope, you're different. Fast forward a few centuries, and the Romans took one look at the Europe-Asia divide and said, yup, this works, we'll keep it. Because let's be honest, nothing screams Roman Empire like arbitrarily deciding where continents start and end. They didn't question the logic. They just copied the Greeks and moved on to more important things, like building aqueducts and conquering half the known world. By the Middle Ages, Europeans had fully bought into the idea that they lived on a separate continent from Asia, even though you could literally walk from Paris to Beijing without ever leaving land. But hey, who needs logic when you've got centuries of tradition backing you up? Plus, labeling Asia as the exotic other made Europe feel extra special and sophisticated. Meanwhile, Asia was out there casually inventing paper, building massive empires, and dominating global trade, completely unaware that a bunch of Europeans who had never set foot past Turkey had lumped the entire region into one giant, mystical East. Classic. Then came the Mongols, history's equivalent of a bulldozer. Genghis Khan and his buddies looked at the so-called Europe-Asia border and basically said, "Yeah, that's cute." They conquered everything from China to Poland without worrying about continents, borders, or the Greek philosophers who made them up. To the Mongols, Eurasia was just one massive playground. Honestly, if you had asked a Mongol warrior, "Hey, do you think Europe and Asia are separate continents?" he probably would have just laughed, taken your horse, and left. You'd think modern geographers would have fixed this nonsense by now. But nope, we still teach kids that Europe and Asia are two different continents, even though every logical argument says otherwise. And don't even get me started on the countries stuck in between, places like Russia, Turkey, and Kazakhstan. One part of these countries is in Europe, and the other part is in Asia. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that your left foot is in one continent while your right foot is in another. And here's where it gets even weirder. Geographically, if we're being honest, Europe is just a peninsula of Asia. That's right, folks. Europe is actually a glorified extension of Asia. But you'll never hear that in a history book because Europeans might have an identity crisis. Breaking news. The Europe-Asia divide isn't really about geography. It's about history, culture, and let's be real, politics. People in Europe see themselves as different from people in Asia, and that cultural distinction has shaped the way we define continents. It's less about land and more about identity. Europeans historically saw themselves as part of the Western world, while Asia was grouped as the East. But let's be honest, calling Europe a separate continent is like calling your backyard a different country just because you built a fence. So, should we just merge Europe and Asia into one big continent called Eurasia? Logically, yes. Will we? Absolutely not. Because humans are stubborn and we've been teaching kids this nonsense for too long to back out now. But hey, next time someone insists Europe and Asia are separate, just show them a map and say, "Then explain this." Or better yet, hop on a train from Moscow to Beijing, and the next time someone asks where you are, just say, "I don't know, man. I think I'm in Eurasia." If you enjoyed this video, or if you ever want Europe and Asia to be as one continent living harmoniously together, leave a like and don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. Thank you for tuning in and join us next time here in the channel that answers all the why, what, who, where, and how questions you've always wondered about here on Explaining Everything.